Okay, part two. Now this one's gonna be entailing, and if you haven't watched part one, highly recommend it. If you wanted to skip to this just to hear about like the business stuff, then here we are. So once I graduated high school, of course, whenever I was in high school, before graduating, I had those guidance counselors always coming up to me, Nate, what college are you gonna commit to? Are you going to the military? Blah, blah, blah. And, you know, this was before I even realized what intuition was. But now, knowing what I know now, intuition back then for me, that's what spoke to me and said, Nate, you don't want to go to college, so don't force yourself. And at the time, I was working at McDonald's. I was literally cashier, flipping burgers, and I was doing that. Whenever I graduated, I was doing that for about close to a year, probably about 9 months at the time, and probably about 8 months, 7, 8 months. And I didn't want to go to college. I definitely, I'll tell you one thing. I considered the military more serious than what I ever would have considered college. And I think what this was, and I know I said after I graduated, I'm getting into it, but kind of going back a little bit, but I started reading books and I started watching motivational videos whenever I was playing soccer. And of course, after my parents separated, I wanted things to motivate me a little bit more. And I went to this one video and, it was a dude working out on the beach. Giovanni Ruffin is his name. And the voice behind it was saying, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. And I literally watched that video over and over again before games. And I later found out that the person who that was, I thought it was Giovanni speaking, but it was actually Eric Thomas, who also went by E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher. So I was like, man, let me look into this dude. And he had his own website, had his own YouTube channel. I would literally watch his YouTube videos in school during the day, and people would look at me like I'm nuts. Like, what are you watching this dude for? This dude, he has like a snapback on, has a t-shirt with motivational sayings, speaking life into the camera, anywhere from like 6 to 15 minutes long. Every single week he'd come out with TGIM, thank God it's Monday. And I looked up to him so much, I then, so again, I'm reading his books. What's his book called? Secrets to Success. I almost said my book, Success Secrets for the Young Entrepreneur. Secret to Success. I got his book. And then I got a second book, Greatness is Upon You. And then with me following him, this is after I graduated high school, I was still working at McDonald's, right? I found out that he was hosting a conference in Hartford, Connecticut. And from where I'm at in Pennsylvania, Hartford was about an 8-hour drive, 8 to 9 hour drive. And I went with my best friend at the time. His name is Devin Thompson. And I drove there in my 2002 Mitsubishi Galant. That's another fun fact. I had a car, it wasn't like a Ford Mustang or anything, but it was a really good, reliable car. And the thing with me, if I have something, I'll always make sure that I can add specs to it. So right now I got a Mini Cooper, but it's not just a Mini Cooper. I got tinted windows on that Mini. I got, whenever you open up the doors, the lights reflect on the ground. So I always try to add little details to spiff up something. So we went there in my 2002 Mitsubishi Galant, and I literally could not sleep at all the night before. I got no sleep. And we had to leave at like 3 a.m. Because again, it was a 7-hour drive. The conference started around, you do the math. It was like 10, 11, maybe noon. So I was going great until as soon as that conference started, right whenever we got there, I felt like I was about to crash. Physically, just crash. I was so tired. And I just couldn't even enjoy myself. And people that were a part of E.T.'s crew, that's what he goes by, E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher, Eric Thomas, I call him E.T. for reference. People that were a part of E.T.'s crew, they would come up to me and be like, hey man, record, how long have you following E? And this was one of his first conferences that he was doing on like a bigger scale. So again, I got hooked up there, and then long story short, after that conference, I saw that he offered a online university called Breathe University. And I didn't realize at the time, but it was new. It was a brand new university he came out with. And this was back in like 20, yeah, this is back in 2017 when I did this. BU, Breathe University, BU for reference, came out in like 2016, I believe. Maybe 2017, but I believe it's 2016. So I got involved in 2017. Whenever they came out in 2016, it was brand new, like nobody was really in it. So I got involved when there was about 20 members in the whole university. Today, I mean, there's thousands of members in Breathe University. So I was still working at McDonald's. As soon as I got back from the conference, I quit my job. I was like, man, screw this. I don't want to work at McDonald's, you know? So I quit my job. And going from McDonald's, I went to working at keep in mind, I worked at McDonald's for about 11 months, but I just got tired of working there. I realized I don't want to have a future here at McDonald's, right? There's nothing wrong with it. I learned a lot there. And I also stayed there as long as I did because pretty much all my buddies worked there as well. But I realized, I was like, I didn't really get along with a couple particular managers there. And I got tired of it. I felt like my worth just wasn't even worth anything, especially whenever you're going to conferences and you're reading these books talking about success. And I immediately said, I'm done. I turned in a 2-week notice, but I didn't finish because the one night this manager just pissed me off to so much return. I just literally, I had my clothes out in a bag. I said, all right, I'll see ya. I came back in the back door with my clothes, hung them on the door where the manager was. I didn't say anything. I just left. So then I went to get a job at a gas station, and it's not just any gas station. All right, people would give me crap for this about, man, Nate, you worked at a gas station, because they think of like Shell or some ghetto gas station. But I worked at a gas station called Sheetz. And if you're aware of that, you know what I mean. If you're not, it's kind of like a Wawa in a way, but I think it's better. So I worked at a Sheetz in the West. If you're on the West Coast, you don't understand what we're talking about. You're missing out on gas stations here. So I worked there for about a solid 3 months. Yeah. It's so funny because the conference that was in Connecticut was in July. And then I left. I started working at Sheetz, I believe, early August. So August, September, into October. There was another conference in October in Scottsdale, Arizona. And this is whenever I was already involved in Breathe University. So we got like a special discount by being in the program. Long story short, I was like, hey, Mom, let's go to this conference. Because I knew it would mean a lot to her. So we went to this conference. Keep in mind, guys, Eric Thomas to me at that time was basically like a Cristiano Ronaldo to a soccer player. Basically like a LeBron James or a Justin Bieber to someone at the time. I really looked up majorly to him then. And we went to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I was still working at Sheetz. And I remember we were at this hotel, the Talking Stick Resort Casino Hotel in Arizona. And again, I'm 18 years old at the time, right? And then I'm outside with my mom, and all of a sudden I see E.T. walk out, and I'm like, holy smokes, that's E.T. And he sees me look at him. He knows I wanted to say something, and he came over and showed his respect. And I was like, man, I didn't really know what to say, but he didn't realize that I was part of BU. Like, he knew my name, but he didn't know that I was him, that I was Nate. And of course, I'm in a group chat on GroupMe, and they're like, all right, all the people in BU come to this room, this conference center. So 15 minutes later, I went to that conference center, and he saw me. He's like, Nate, that's you? And we gathered all around a conference table. It was him and then some of the other members in BU. I think there was about probably 10, 15 of us in the room. And we all went around and explained our reasoning for being there. And it was cool because they showed me such appreciation for me being there for my age. And then for me bringing my mom. it was a recognition I never got before from someone like E. And that's why I always have so much respect for him, because he really showed me what it's like to be recognized early on at such a young age. Again, I never got recognized in school. I never did. I maybe a few times during soccer, whenever I was a major difference within a soccer game, but I never really got recognized that often. So to feel that love and hanging around those people, it just showed me so much. And during the conference, it was like a 3-day conference, I learned so much. Of course, we were like front row, and my brother texted my mom and said, "Hey, Mufasa, our cat, who we've had for years, ever since I was little, is dying. And he said he's not going to make it another day. He had like a thyroid issue." So when we were there, Mufasa, my cat, died. And my mom was a wreck, dude. I was a wreck too. My cat died. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that it happened during that time, because we were in a space where you really couldn't be low, because you were with such high energy people, right? It's like if somebody goes to a Tony Robbins conference, you're in such a high state. That's where those breakthroughs happen. And I'm just grateful that happened during that time. But anyways, we left that conference. I came back. Guess what? I quit my job. Hasn't even been 3 months. Quit my job at the gas station. The whole Sheetz gas station, that was cool. I'd say one thing that irritated me the most was the people I worked with. They got fed up because I wasn't the quickest at making food, because I always wanted to make sure it was presentable. I just wasn't good at that. And then I was a cash register, but whenever people would come in and order cigarettes, guys, keep in mind, the cigarette industry, they have so many doggone brands. For me to remember where these people got so fed up with that, and just the management there, I didn't care for it. So I left after I came back from the conference, and I was like, before I'm leaving though, I had to make a plan. And it's funny, my grandparents, which was my mom, my dad's mom and dad that were living in Altoona, they always kicked around the idea like, "Well, Nate, what if you found a job up here?" And I'm like, shoot, why not, So I applied for a job at Dick's Sporting Goods. And I was like, you know what? At the time, I was like, I'm going to take a risk, right? It really wasn't that big of a risk, but at the time it was. And they said, "Hey, we want to interview you." So I was like, well, shoot. Okay. If they want to interview me, I'm going to have to do it on my off day, working at the gas station. So again, Altoona is 2 hours away from Chambersburg. So I drove 2 hours and did an interview, and then I would drive back. And that was the first interview. Then they said, "Hey, we want to have a second interview with you." So I went in for a second interview. And then they said they'd call me back. And then days went by, I didn't hear anything from them. And then finally I called them back again, and they said, "Hey, we'll get back to you." And I'd say probably a week went by. And they finally called back and said, "Hey, we want to hire you." So I was like, well, this is great. So I quit my job at Sheetz. And I literally just, with my 2002 Mitsubishi Galant, I drove 2 hours and started living with my grandparents in their house. And I was like, man, this is cool. I'm working at a sporting goods store. I'm passionate about sports. I work the team sports section, which is the baseball, soccer area, lacrosse, hockey. Hockey's huge up in Altoona for the winter times. I would literally sharpen people's ice skates. I would have to beat people's baseball gloves in, because if you get a new glove, you want to make sure it's broken in. So I would literally just boom, boom, put it in a steamer machine, liquidize the glove. And I could work every department in there. I was working the golf section from time to time, because I played some golf growing up, nothing professionally, but I'd go golfing with my dad and my grandparents a lot. And I could work every section, but I worked cash register. I worked the cashier. So I'm living with my grandparents at the time, and working at Dick's Sporting Goods. And it was so fun working there, because pretty much, if you're not familiar with Pennsylvania, Penn State University, Penn State Nittany Lions, they're stationed in State College, Pennsylvania, which is about 30, 40 minutes away from Altoona. So then Penn State, just like a lot of other universities, they have branch campuses. So there's like a Penn State Mont Alto, Penn State Altoona. So and there's other ones too. Penn State Altoona, so that's in Altoona. So a lot of the people I worked with were people that went to school at Penn State Altoona. And when they asked me, Nate, so what do you do? What do you want to do with your life? I'm like, I want to be a motivational speaker. And I got that from being with ET a lot. And a lot of people, they're like, wait, what? How do you want to? And I had managers at Dick's Sporting Goods. I mean, they would literally pick fun of me. And they'd call me, hey, Petey, and all this stuff. And again, guys, in these jobs, I never took it serious. The only thing I took serious was how I helped other people and how I made others feel. That's the only thing I took serious. I was working at Dick's Sporting Goods and I would give people coupons for like 50%, 70% off. And people might say, well, Nate, how did you do that? Don't they have it programmed in the system to not do that? It's like, well, yeah, but again, whenever the manager would come up, put their numbers in for like a malfunction in the system, I would memorize that. And then at the time, I mean, yeah, I gave away free products doing that. And there was times where I'm like, shoot, I forgot to scan that, but I didn't want to cause a scene. So I would just be like, hey, you're good, just take it. And it was for like a baseball bat and maybe another baseball bat too. But there was a few items that I just simply was like, hey, just take care of it. But I'd really hook people up. And then around Black Friday, of course, you'd have to work like 12-hour days and early in the mornings. And I always say this as an example, being a cashier, there was other cashiers as well. And I would always have people in my line. And the other cashiers were open and they're like, hey, we can take you over there. But they're like, no, we want to go through Nate. And I was like, oh, shoot. And they said, well, why don't you? Because Nate actually takes the time to have a conversation with us, to understand us. And that's the thing, guys. I would literally take notes. When I say take notes, I mean, like I would take down on a note paper and say, right around the holidays, have a Merry Christmas. I would go to that extent because I cared about the customers coming in the doors. So I enjoyed working at Dick's Sporting Goods. It was such an easy job. I was passionate about sports. And whenever I first started working there, I met a good buddy of mine. His name's Herman Johnson. And he followed ET as well. And at the time, because he's from Baltimore, he's black and everything. And at the time, I never met anybody else who heard of Eric Thomas in Pennsylvania. Never. Unless I shared it with them. So the fact that he knew who that was, I was like, yo, this dude's already a homie. Do the handshakes and everything. So one day, he's like, hey, Nate, meet me in the parking lot in Dick's Sporting Goods. I want to show you something. So I met him in the parking lot and I got in his car and he was like, hey, I got a drink for you. I tried this drink and I was like, yo, what is this? He's like, it's an energy drink. And in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I don't drink energy drinks, but it tastes pretty damn good. It tasted like some vitamin healthy drink. So, man, dude, that's funny because I'm having a craving for it right now. So he introduced me to, it was called Vima, and it was a network marketing company. They're no longer a thing anymore. I think you can still order their products, but so he introduced me to the whole network marketing concept, and I was like, whoa, you can work for yourself. You just have these products that you have to market. But simply the thing that made me excited the most was not about the products. I mean, it was cool because I was like, yo, I got these energy drinks that I can drink. Gosh, dude, I could go for that right now. I could go for some energy drinks. But yeah, it wasn't about the products. It was about me simply getting people to join my team. It was the fact that I could build a lifestyle. And he showed me these videos about how younger dudes were literally living the dream, had these Mercedes Benzes, BMWs, how they would and that's what I wanted to live. So he sold me on it. I think I invested about $650, almost $700. I think it was like a paycheck or two into that. And I got involved. So I got these energy drinks delivered to my grandparents' house. And of course, my grandparents are like, what the heck are you doing? I showed them a video of what this consists of. And of course, in their mind, they're thinking of Mary Kay, they're thinking of Amway, and how their older friends do this, but they don't make a living from it. So they kind of had a bad misrepresentation of the whole network marketing industry. And they're expecting results to come quick and everything. And long story short, Herman was basically that dude that I would somewhat look up to in a way. And yeah, it got to a point in time where I was working at Dick's for about a year, going over a year now. And my grandparents, they were getting a little eager because I was about 19 years old at the time now and getting ready to turn 20. And they're like, Nate, what do you, like, do you want to go to college? Like, what's your goal here? Are they offering any further positions here at Dick's Sporting Goods? Like, what's the goal? And I could feel their vibes. This is before I even knew what vibes meant. I could tell they were getting a little irritated, especially my grandfather. I could feel that. And that's whenever because they would go to Florida 3 months out of the year. So whenever they went to Florida, before they went to Florida, I was still doing the network marketing thing, still meeting with Herm. I was like, all right, I got to get out of this job. So what did I do? I was like, you know what? Let me go for one of the biggest jobs in Altoona. And it was working as a car salesman at a place called Fury's. And Fury's is somebody's last name, and it's like one of the wealthiest families in Altoona. So I applied to work at, it's funny because so did Herman did as well. I'll address him as Herm. So Herm did too. We both applied, and there was about 5 to 8 other applicants that were applying, and they only were hiring 3 people. Might have been 10 that applied. Long story short, I was at Herman's house the one day, his apartment, and they called him and said, hey, you got hired. And I was like, dude, congrats. And in my mind, I'm thinking, damn, why didn't I get hired? So later that night, I got a call and they said, hey, Nate, we're going to hire you. So Herman and I both got hired to work selling cars. And it was fun because we're like, man, because he left Dick's Sporting Goods about a month or 2 after I was there, because he was a worker that was a temp worker, I believe, just for the season. And they let him go. And then he worked at like a mattress firm. So the fact that we were coming back together and we were doing network marketing, we're like, yo, this is great, man. And, you know, long story short, with the whole Vemma thing, it was about a couple months whenever I was working at Dick's Sporting Goods that I and Herman found out that the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, came in and said, hey, Vemma, you guys are going against policies here. You're not doing it the right way, how network marketing should be done. We're going to shut you down. So they shut Vemma down. Actually, this wasn't even 30 days into me actually signing up, paying that $700. So I felt like, damn, I got screwed. But I still had that hope, meaning I still want to live this lifestyle. So this is whenever Herman came at me and said, hey, Nate, there's something else that we're going to get involved in. And I was like, heck yeah, dude, let's do it. So we got involved and it was an upline of his name was called Leo. So Leo talked with me and was like, yo, Nate, man, this is where it's at. Because we were a part of like this certain group. It was called the Generation Young, GY, because they had pins for it, Generation Young. And it's like everywhere this group went, everybody else followed. So they went to Jeunesse. And it was like an Asian-based company, but they were starting to blow up in the States. So I got enrolled into Jeunesse. It was like $250, $300 to enroll. It was half the price of what it took to get into Vemma. And it was mainly dealing with skincare and just anti-aging, literally. So I got in that company with Herman, and I was still at Dick's at the time, but let's fast forward to selling cars. I was in Jeunesse selling cars. I was in Jeunesse and I was selling cars, and I hit about 2 ranks in Jeunesse. So whenever we had like our convention, because these network marketing companies every year, they'll have like 1 or 2 conventions. So we had a convention in Orlando, Florida, I went to. And I was a certain rank. It wasn't anything major, but I got recognition for it. And I was starting to make a little bit of a name for myself. And again, like I said, back to the whole ET thing, I loved how he gave me recognition. So it's like I always strived for recognition. Same with soccer. I got so many trophies, because I looked at those trophies and I'm like, I want that trophy. So it was cool to get recognition and being able to speak at some of these events. Nothing like major on stage or anything, but in front of people, I got a chance to speak. And I was living my dream. I'm like, man, I'm a motivational speaker. I want to do that. And long story short, I'm selling cars for about 2.5, maybe 3 months. And the management there was just absolutely awful. I realized I wasn't passionate about cars, for one, and I cared more about the people, which I think any good salesman should, 100%. And I thought so back then. But apparently, I got the finger pointed at me and I was wrong. Herman had some altercations verbally with the sales manager and then myself. I cried like a time. I even cried at Dick's Sporting Goods because, I just wasn't producing the numbers as what I was meant to, and I just cared more about the people than I did hitting the numbers. Same with selling cars. I sold 2 cars my whole time being there. One was a Toyota Camry and then one was a Toyota Tacoma. And I left, literally just didn't show up ever again to that place selling cars at Fury's. And what I did was, I realized, because my grandparents were coming back from Florida, so I made a decision and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go back and get a job working somewhere in Chambersburg. So I moved from Altoona back to Chambersburg. And I told my dad, I was like, hey dad, so I'm gonna work in Chambersburg again. Is it cool if I move in with you? Because he was living by himself, still working. What was he working? Yeah, he was working HVAC at the time, heating and air conditioning still. And I was like, hey dad, I'm gonna move in with you. Is that fine? He's like, yeah, that's cool. So I moved in with him, and then I got a job working Herman was still living in Altoona. So whenever I moved back to Chambersburg, keep that in mind, I started working at Rent-A-Center, still doing Jeunesse. So Rent-A-Center, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it. If you're not, it's basically moving furniture in and out of people's houses for people that rent. So it's a very physical job. I had to move washer and dryers, couches, you name it. Literally at the time I was probably weighing 140, 130 pounds. Like, there wasn't much to me. So a job like that was so tough for me. But I was just like, you know what? It's easy. Because I looked at it, I was like, I don't want to have a hard job that makes me think too much, where I want to dedicate my time towards network marketing with Jeunesse. So I literally would host events with a buddy of mine named Henry, who I got started in Jeunesse. And this is where we really started to gain momentum, because then we were starting to build a local team. There locally, we would host, we called them home events. So every single week at Henry's home, we would host events with people that we would invite out. And then the company Jeunesse introduced a energy drink line. So with the energy drinks that we had, we would simply hand them out to people at events. And that would have them get a taste of the product, just like I did with Vemma. I tasted and I'm like, heck yeah, this is dope. And that led me to getting involved in the company. So we were hosting these home events and we were starting to see success. Herman actually came down to one of the events, and it was just so cool. It really was. But then I left Rent-A-Center. And then I got involved working in Dick's Sporting Goods. But guess what? Going back to Dick's Sporting Goods, because they opened one in Chambersburg, because you might be thinking, Nate, why didn't you go to that whenever you were in Chambersburg? They didn't have one in Chambersburg at the time. So they just had like a Dunham's. So going back to Dick's Sporting Goods, I was like, all right, it was an easy hire since I already had experience there and stuff like that. So I went back there. And at the time, I was still in Jeunesse, but then the group that we were a part of, they said, hey, we're going to leave Jeunesse and we're going to create our own company. And that they called Watabu. So Watabu is basically a travel and adventure club, still network marketing. And basically the people that were in Jeunesse and that were on my team, I literally transferred them over to Watabu. So in Watabu, I was still working at Dick's Sporting Goods. That is exactly when I saw major success within network marketing. Let me reiterate that. That's when I start to see a little bit of success. When I say major success, I mean within a recognition point of view, where people and the head guys in that company knew who I was, because I was simply making a lot of traction. I was enrolling people. I was doing the calls. I mean, I got people that were cold to simply join this company, and it was like a $600 to $700 investment. So that was when also I was working at Dick's Sporting Goods, and it was summertime. I would literally come out for break, out of the break room from Dick's Sporting Goods into my car, because I didn't like being around people that much, especially in there. Like I wanted my space, because I would work 4 hour to 8 hour days, and there's times where I'm just like, you know what? I talk to people at the cashier. I get so drained. I'm like, man, let me just go out to the car, listen to some music, or just have some time to myself, like catch up on my phone. And I did that. And I got to a point after 2.5, 3 months of working that did I give them a notice? No, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't show up again. So I'm still living at my dad's house. My dad still thinks that I'm going to work. He's asking, like, what's your schedule this week? And I would tell him, acting as if I am still going to work, which I wasn't when I left. And during the day, I would simply just go to a park or something. Or I would, man, that's funny thinking about this. I would literally go places where I know, because my dad, he would drive around town, and because he's working his job, HVAC, he would drive to people's houses. So I would make sure to go to areas where I know he wouldn't find me, for example. And again, the relationship between me and my dad, it's always been good. Not that I've never had a bad relationship with my dad. But one morning I woke up and I opened my door upstairs, and he came upstairs. And with his tonality, I knew something. I knew he was pissed. He was like, "Hey, I got a letter from Dick's today. I got a letter from Dick's Sporting Goods." I was like, "Oh," I was kind of acting dumb. He was like, "Yeah, I just got off the phone with them actually. They said you haven't showed up for weeks." And he's like, "Do you want to explain yourself?" And I told him, I was like, "Yeah, I quit. I don't work there anymore." He was like, "Why not? Why don't you work there anymore?" I was like, I just didn't want to. You know, and I didn't like hearing my dad like this because it was never this way. And he blew up and he said, "All right, if you're going to lie to me like this, get out of my house. Like, you're out." And then he went back downstairs and left. He drove off. So I let that sink in. I didn't think he really meant for me to leave. So he comes back home that evening and comes back upstairs. It's like nighttime. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just getting some stuff done." He's like, "Did you not hear what I said earlier?" He's like, "I meant what I said." He's like, "I want you out of this house." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And then that's when it hit me. I was like, "Yo, he's actually being serious about this." He's like, "Pack your stuff and get out. I don't want you in this house. Get out." So that's whenever I was like, "Okay." Again, I'm not the kind of dude that's like, "Oh, no, I can't get," I'm not here to cause a fight. So I literally packed everything that I had in my room, in my closet, which wasn't that much, but it was enough to where it stacked my car up, my 2002 Mitsubishi Galant up and to the ceiling. So yeah, I called my mom, and because my mom, she's living about she's about 30 to 45 minutes away in a place called Hagerstown with who her husband was at the time. And got like a bump here. And I told her, explained to her what happened. She said, "Hey, go stay at grandma's." My brother, who was living with my grandma at the time, unlocked the door for me at night. And I just slept on the couch there that night. And then, long story short, chatted with my mom and said what happened. And she was like, "Well, hey, you can come down, come stay with us." So I went down to Hagerstown and started living. And anyways, yeah, that was definitely a moment for me because I realized that, I'm telling you this, because that was a moment for me where I personally realized I'm really dedicated to making this whole network marketing thing work. Like, I wasn't going to give up this. Keep in mind, I didn't have a job anymore, guys. I had no job. I was now living with my mom and her husband at the time and just relying on doing network marketing. And then they moved and they got a place in a little town called Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, where I then located with them to live. And whenever I lived in Waynesboro with both of them, I was still doing the network marketing. And my mom's husband, he's from like the Republic of Georgia. So yeah, he worked at like setting up tents and stuff. And long story short, that I knew that wasn't going to work out. He didn't care. I could tell he didn't care much for me being there. And he basically like married my mother to get his green card and kind of tricked her into that, which is a shame. It's pretty messed up. I know I don't want to go too deep into that, but yeah, it's whenever I was living there, I literally had to sell everything that I had. I sold a really nice Canon camera. I sold everything just to pay my bills, which again, I didn't have many bills at the time. I'd say my biggest bill was my phone bill, which is like $70, actually insurance was, which was like 150. But that was, yeah, that's whenever I was just dedicated to the whole Watabu thing and network marketing. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to make a part 3 to this because I'm going on 40 minutes, I see. I wasn't expecting to go this deep into it, but I really want you guys to understand just where I come from and more to the story, you know? So I'm going to title this part 2, After Graduation in Corporate Life. And then part 3, I'm going to dive into the business life. So stay tuned to part 3.